The letter arrived on a Tuesday, the kind of dreary autumn morning where everything feels like a bad omen. I'd just finished my morning rounds at the hospital when I saw it sitting in my locker, the handwriting so familiar it made my stomach clench. My name is Alara, and I hadn't heard from my mother in 15 years. Not since the day she chose her new husband over me. The envelope was expensive, thick cream paper with a watermark. Classic Marlowe, always trying to make poverty look expensive. My hands trembled as I turned it over, the hospital's fluorescent lights suddenly too harsh on my eyes. "Dr. Chen needs you in oncology," Sarah, one of the nurses, called out. I shoved the letter into my coat pocket, where it burned like a hot coal against my hip throughout my next 3 consultations. It wasn't until my lunch break that I found the courage to open it. Sitting in my favorite quiet spot, the empty conference room overlooking the hospital gardens, I finally broke the seal. "Dearest Alara," it began, and I almost laughed at the audacity. "Dearest? After all these years? There are things you need to know about your grandmother's inheritance. Things Griffin and I have discovered that change everything. Please meet me at the Riverside Cafe this Saturday at 2 p.m. Come alone." The paper crumpled in my fist before I realized I was crushing it. My grandmother Odessa had died 6 months ago, leaving me her house and a modest savings account. It wasn't much, but it was everything to me. The only piece of real family I had left. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Did you get my letter? Please say you'll come. Mom." "Dr. Morrison?" A knock at the door made me jump. Dr. Rivera, my mentor, poked his head in. "Everything okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I forced a smile. "Just some family drama." He nodded knowingly. "Those are always the worst cases. Speaking of cases, your patient in 304 is asking for you. The test results are in." Work. Yes. Work was safe. Work made sense. I stood up, smoothing my coat, but my mind was already racing ahead to Saturday. What could Marlowe possibly want after all this time? And why bring up Grandma Odessa's inheritance now? The last time I'd seen my mother, I was 15. She stood in our driveway with Griffin, her new husband, telling me I was being difficult and needed time to adjust. That adjustment apparently meant shipping me off to live with my Aunt Lorna while they started their new life with Griffin's daughter, Talia. Sometimes, Grandma Odessa used to tell me, people mistake running away for moving forward. She'd been right about so many things. I pulled out my phone and typed a quick response. "I'll be there." Then I added, "Don't bring Griffin." The reply came instantly. "Just us. I promise." But Marlowe's promises had always been like sandcastles, beautiful, elaborate, and quick to wash away with the tide. The last time I'd trusted her word, I'd ended up losing my home, my family, and any belief in happy endings. As I headed to room 304, my grandmother's last words to me echoed in my head. "The truth always finds its way home, sweetheart. Just make sure you're ready when it knocks." Well, it wasn't knocking anymore. It was sitting in my pocket in expensive cream-colored paper, written in my mother's flowing script, threatening to unravel everything I'd built since she walked away. Saturday was 4 days away. 4 days to decide whether I was really ready for whatever truth was coming home. I spent the next few days buried in work, but memories kept surfacing like bodies in a flood. The worst one hit during a patient consultation, triggered by a perfume that smelled exactly like the one Marlowe used to wear. "Your prognosis is excellent, Mrs. Chen," I was saying when the scent caught me. Suddenly, I was 15 again, standing in our old living room, watching Griffin's hands on my mother's shoulders while he explained why sending me away was for the best. "Dr. Morrison?" "Mrs. Chen's voice snapped me back. "You seemed far away for a moment." I apologized and finished the consultation, but my hands were shaking. After my shift, I drove to Grandma Odessa's house, my house now. The porch steps creaked under my feet just like they always had. Inside, everything was exactly as she'd left it, down to the half-finished crossword puzzle on the coffee table. My phone rang. Aunt Lorna's name flashed on the screen. "I heard Marlowe contacted you," she said without preamble. Classic Lorna, always straight to the point. News travels fast. I sank into Grandma's old armchair, inhaling the lingering scent of her lavender sachets. That woman never could leave well enough alone. Lorna's voice had an edge I rarely heard. Did she mention Griffin? She promised he wouldn't be there. And you believe her? I didn't answer. Through the window, I watched a pair of cardinals at the bird feeder Grandma had installed. Red against white against gray sky. Remember what happened the last time she made promises? Lorna continued. When she swore the separation would only be temporary? I remember everything. My voice came out harder than intended. I also remember you taking me in when she didn't want me anymore. A long pause followed. That's not exactly how it happened, Alara. Something in her tone made me sit up straighter. What do you mean? It's not my place to. She stopped abruptly. Just be careful on Saturday. Griffin has always been good at pulling strings from behind the scenes. After hanging up, I went upstairs to the attic. Grandma's old boxes were still there, untouched since the funeral. I'd been meaning to sort through them, but hadn't found the courage yet. Now, something drove me to open the one marked family photos. The first album I pulled out fell open to a wedding picture, Marlo and my father. She looked so young, so genuine in her happiness. The next photo showed them with me as a baby, all three of us laughing at something off camera. Then came the photos after Dad died. Fewer smiles, more forced poses, until finally Griffin appeared and I disappeared altogether. My phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number again. Looking forward to Saturday. There's so much to explain, Mom. Before I could respond, another text came through. I know you probably hate me. You have every right to. I started typing I don't hate you but deleted it. What was the point of lying? Instead, I wrote, just tell me one thing. Is this really about Grandma's inheritance? 3 disappeared, appeared again. Finally, it's about making things right. I snorted. Making things right? After 15 years? I was about to reply when movement outside caught my eye. Through the attic window, I saw a car parked across the street, a black SUV with tinted windows. As I watched, it pulled away slowly. Something cold settled in my stomach. I'd seen that SUV before, outside the hospital after receiving Marlo's letter. My phone buzzed one more time. By the way, how are you enjoying Grandma's house? Still has that lovely view from the attic, doesn't it? I dropped the phone like it had burned me. Someone had been watching. Someone knew exactly where I was, what I was doing. The cardinal pair had left the feeder, leaving only scattered seeds in their wake. I thought of what Lorna said about Griffin pulling strings, about things not being what they seemed. Saturday suddenly felt very far away and much too close at the same time. That night, while searching for an old medical textbook in Grandma's study, I found her journal. It was hidden behind a loose panel in her desk drawer, bound in worn leather with her initials pressed into the cover. I almost missed it, but the edge caught on my sleeve as I was reaching for something else. The first entry was dated 2 weeks before she died. My dearest Alara will inherit everything, she'd written in her careful script. Marlo won't understand, but she gave up her right to this legacy long ago. Not when she remarried, that I could have forgiven, but when she let that man dictate the terms of her love. My hands trembled as I turned the page. More entries followed, each one revealing pieces of a story I'd never known. Griffin came by today, read an entry from 3 months before her death. He wanted to discuss financial arrangements. As if I didn't know what that meant. He thinks Marlo's desperate enough now to play along with his schemes. Maybe she is. The doorbell rang, startling me so badly, I dropped the journal. Through the window, I saw a familiar figure on the porch, my stepsister, Talia. I know it's late, she said when I opened the door. Her eyes were red-rimmed, mascara slightly smudged. I need to talk to you about Mom and Dad. I hesitated, but the raw desperation in her voice made me step aside. She'd grown up since I'd last seen her, no longer the wide-eyed 7-year-old who watched me pack my bags. They're planning something, she said, pacing the living room. Dad's been meeting with lawyers, going through Grandma Odessa's old papers. Mom keeps crying when she thinks no one's watching. Why are you telling me this? Talia stopped pacing. Because I found these. She pulled out a stack of letters from her bag. They're from Grandma Odessa to Mom, written over the years after you left. Dad doesn't know I have them. I took the letters with numb fingers. The first one was dated just after I moved out. How dare you let him make this choice for you, Marlo? Your daughter needs you, not his twisted version of family loyalty. The money isn't worth this. Money. It always came back to money. There's more, Talia said quietly. Dad's in trouble. Serious trouble. The kind that makes people desperate. He thinks Grandma Odessa left something valuable behind, something more than just the house. A memory surfaced. Grandma at her desk, carefully wrapping something in silk before locking it away. She'd caught me watching and smiled. Sometimes, she'd said, the most valuable things look worthless to the wrong eyes. Why should I believe you? I asked Talia. You're still their daughter. Because I remember watching you leave. Her voice cracked. I remember asking Mom why my new big sister had to go away and seeing Dad smile when she couldn't answer. My phone buzzed. Another text from Marlo. Changed my mind. Let's meet tonight instead of Saturday. Same place. Please come now. Talia read the message over my shoulder and went pale. Don't go. Dad knows about the journal. He's been watching the house, waiting for you to find it. As if on cue, headlights swept across the windows. The black SUV was back, idling at the curb. He followed me, Talia whispered. I'm so sorry. I thought I was careful. I grabbed Grandma's journal and the letters, shoving them into my bag. Is there something specific he's looking for? I don't know exactly, but... She stopped as the front door handle jiggled. Someone was trying to get in. The back door. I hissed, pulling her toward the kitchen. There's a path through the gardens. As we slipped out into the darkness, I heard the front door open. Griffin's voice carried through the house. Check everywhere. The old woman must have left some clue about where she hid it. Whatever it was, I had a feeling the answer was somewhere in the journal clutched against my chest. Grandma Odessa had wanted me to find it. That much was clear. But as Talia and I crouched behind the garden shed, watching shadows move through my grandmother's house, I realized finding answers might cost more than I was ready to pay. Talia and I spent the night at Aunt Lorna's house, huddled around her kitchen table with Grandma's journal spread between us. The kitchen clock ticked past midnight as Lorna paced, phone pressed to her ear. Your mother's not answering, she said finally, setting the phone down. And neither is Griffin. Look at this. Talia pointed to an entry in the journal. 2 months ago, Grandma wrote about a safety deposit box at Riverside Bank. My eyes caught on the next line. The deed must never fall into Griffin's hands. He'd destroy everything Marlo's father built, just like he destroyed their marriage. Deed. I looked at Lorna. What deed? She sat down heavily, her face drawn. The old factory on River Street. Your grandfather's legacy. It's worth millions now that the city's redeveloping that area. But that closed years ago, I said. The building closed. The land rights are another matter. Lorna reached for an envelope in her purse. Odessa gave me this before she died. Said to open it if anyone came asking about property deeds. Inside was a single photograph, my grandfather standing proudly in front of the factory, arm around a much younger Marlo. On the back was written, "The true inheritance lies beneath." My phone buzzed. Marlo again. We need to talk. Griffin doesn't know I'm contacting you. Please. It's a trap, Talia said immediately. Dad's probably right there with her. But something in the message felt different. The previous ones had been polished, careful. This one was raw, desperate. I started typing a response when Lorna grabbed my wrist. Wait. There's something you both need to know first. She took a deep breath. The night Odessa died, Griffin came to see her. I was there, in the next room. He threatened to expose something about Marlo, something that would send her to prison. What could Mom have done that was that bad? Talia whispered. Your father's construction company? Lorna looked at her. The one that made him rich overnight 15 years ago? That success came from stolen documents, property plans your mother took from her father's office before he died. The timing hit me like a punch. 15 years ago. Right when Marlo married Griffin. Right when I was sent away. My phone buzzed again. This time a photo. Marlo in what looked like a basement, holding up today's newspaper. Below it, time's running out. Come alone to the factory. Now. I have to go, I said, standing.
Elara, no.
Lorna blocked my path. This is exactly what Griffin wants. He's using Marlo to get to you, to get to whatever's hidden at that factory. Look at her eyes in that photo, I insisted. She's terrified. And for once, I don't think it's an act. Talia stood too. Then I'm coming with you.
No.
I gathered the journal and photo. You need to take these to the police. Tell them everything about Griffin's threats, about the property deed. And what about you? Lorna demanded. I thought about all the times I'd imagined confronting Marlo, demanding answers about why she chose Griffin over me. Now, seeing her fear in that photo, I realized maybe she never had a choice at all. I'm going to do what Grandma Odessa would have done, I said. I'm going to save my mother from the man who's been controlling her for 15 years. As I headed for the door, Talia called out, What if it's too late? What if she doesn't want to be saved? I paused, remembering Grandma's last words about truth finding its way home. Then at least I'll know I tried. Sometimes that's all we can do. The night air was sharp with autumn chill as I walked to my car. Somewhere across town, in an abandoned factory, my mother was either waiting to be rescued or helping set a trap. Either way, I was done running from the past. It was time to face whatever truth waited in the darkness. The old factory loomed against the night sky, its broken windows like empty eye sockets, staring down at me. I parked behind a rusted dumpster and killed the engine, checking my phone one last time. No messages from Talia or Lorna, but a new one from Marlo. Loading dock. Hurry. My flashlight beam caught movement in the shadows as I approached. A cat darted past, making me jump. The loading dock door was already open, chain lock broken. Mom, my whisper echoed through the empty space. Alara? Marlo's voice came from somewhere deeper inside. I'm down here. I followed the sound, my footsteps crunching on broken glass. The beam of my flashlight revealed stairs leading to the basement level. Each step creaked under my weight, announcing my presence to anyone listening. I found Marlo in what must have been an old office. She sat in a metal folding chair, her hands trembling as she held her phone. She looked older than I remembered, more fragile. You shouldn't have come, she said, but made no move to get up. Where's Griffin? Getting what he came for. She glanced at her phone. The deed isn't just for the factory, Alara. Your grandfather had other properties, investments hidden from everyone except Odessa. Griffin found out somehow and She stopped, pressing her lips together. He what, Mom? Threatened you? Again? A door slammed somewhere above us. Marlo flinched. We need to go, I said, reaching for her arm. Talia and Lorna are talking to the police right now. Talia? Her eyes widened. No, she can't, Griffin will. Will what? Griffin's voice came from the doorway. Finally tell the truth about her precious mother? He stepped into the room, holding something that looked like an old lockbox. The sight of him, exactly as I remembered, down to that smug smile, made my stomach turn. The prodigal daughter returns, he said, just in time to watch everything fall apart. Again. It's over, Griffin, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Whatever you're planning. Planning. He laughed. Oh, I'm way past planning. Did your mother tell you what really happened the night your father died? About the argument they had over these property deeds? About how she chose money over marriage? Marlo made a small, broken sound. That's not what happened. No. Griffin set the lockbox down with deliberate care. Then tell her, Marlo. Tell her how you knew the brakes on your husband's car were failing. Tell her how you let him drive anyway because a dead husband meant full control of the inheritance. The room tilted. I grabbed the wall for support. Mom, I didn't know, Marlo whispered. I swear, I didn't know they would fail that night. I was going to tell him. But you didn't, Griffin cut in. And then I came along, figured it out, and offered you a deal. My silence for your daughter's future. Fair trade, wouldn't you say? My flashlight beam caught something metallic in his hand. A gun, small but deadly in the darkness. "The police are coming," I said, but my voice shook. "They won't find anything here." Griffin smiled. "Just like they didn't find anything 15 years ago. Amazing what money can hide, isn't it?" A noise from above, footsteps, multiple sets. Griffin's smile faltered. "That would be my insurance policy," Marlowe said quietly, holding up her phone. The screen showed a recording app, running for the past 10 minutes. "I may have failed my daughter once, but never again." Griffin's face twisted with rage. He lunged for the phone just as shouts of "police, don't move" echoed down the stairs. In the chaos that followed, the flash of police lights, the thunder of footsteps, Griffin's cursing, I found myself staring at my mother. She looked back at me, tears streaming down her face, still holding her phone like a shield. "I'm so sorry," she mouthed. "But sorry for what? For my father's death? For choosing Griffin? For 15 years of silence? Or for making me realize that sometimes the truth doesn't set you free, it just gives you new chains to break?" The police interview room felt smaller with each passing hour. I sat across from Detective Chun, watching him flip through Grandma Odessa's journal while my world crumbled around me. "So your father's death wasn't an accident," he said, not looking up. "But we can't prove Griffin's involvement without more evidence than a recorded confession under duress." "What about the lockbox?" My voice sounded hollow, even to me. "Empty." He closed the journal. "And your mother's refusing to testify. Says she made up the story about the breaks to protect you." Of course she was. Even now, Marlowe was choosing Griffin. Some things never changed. The door opened, and Talia slipped in. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dad's lawyer got him released on bail. He's already talking about pressing charges against Mom for defamation. My laugh came out bitter. Of course he is. There's more. Talia wouldn't meet my eyes. He's filing an injunction about Grandma Odessa's estate. Says Mom was coerced into giving up her inheritance rights. He wants everything frozen until it's sorted out, including the house. My house. The only place I had left of Grandma. Detective Chun gathered his papers. "We'll keep investigating, but without your mother's cooperation." He didn't need to finish. I knew how this ended. Griffin would walk away clean, just like he had 15 years ago. Only this time, he'd take everything Grandma Odessa had tried to protect. Outside the station, rain fell in sheets. Talia grabbed my arm before I could reach my car. "I found something in Dad's office," she said, voice low. "Bank statements showing transfers to the mechanic who worked on your father's car. Regular payments, starting the week before the accident and continuing for years after." "Can you prove it?" I took photos, but she swallowed hard. "He caught me. Said if I showed anyone, he'd make sure Mom took the fall for everything. She'd go to prison, Alara." And there it was. The perfect trap. Griffin had spent 15 years building it, layer by layer. Now we were all caught, me, Marlowe, Talia. Even Grandma Odessa hadn't escaped his web. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the house. One last chance to fix this." Don't go," Talia pleaded. "He'll be waiting." "I know." I got into my car. That's counting on it. At Grandma's house. All the lights were on. Griffin's car sat in the driveway, next to Marlowe's. As I walked up the path, I remembered Grandma's words from her journal. The true inheritance lies beneath. I found them in the study. Griffin stood by the window, Marlowe perched on the edge of Grandma's desk like a frightened bird. "Come to beg for a deal?" Griffin smiled. "I'm feeling generous. Drop everything, the accusations, the investigation, your claim to the estate, and I'll let your mother keep her freedom."
No.
I looked at Marlowe. "You don't get to threaten us anymore." "Alara, please," Marlowe whispered. "Just let it go. Like you let Dad go." The words tasted like ash. Or, like you let me go? Griffin's smile widened. "Face it, you've lost. Just like your father lost. Just like Odessa lost."
No.
I pulled out my phone, showed them the screen. A live stream, broadcasting everything to Detective Chen. "This time you lost." Griffin lunged for the phone, but stopped short as police sirens wailed in the distance. His face contorted with rage. "You stupid girl," he snarled, reaching into his jacket. "You think I won't?" A gunshot cracked through the room. Griffin stumbled, clutching his shoulder. Behind him, Marlowe stood trembling, holding a small revolver, Grandma Odessa's revolver. "Not my daughter," she said. "Never again." As Griffin fell, something clattered from his jacket pocket, a key, old and brass, with a tag attached. In Grandma's handwriting, "Basement safe. The truth waits below." The sirens grew louder, but all I could hear was my heart pounding. We'd won, but at what cost? And what truth still waited in the darkness beneath our feet? While the police secured Griffin and paramedics tended to his wound, I descended into the basement, Marlowe and Talia close behind. The key felt heavy in my hand, like it carried all our secrets with it. "I didn't know about this safe," Marlowe said, her voice still shaking. "Mother never told me." "She told me." I found the safe behind an old shelf, exactly where Grandma had described in her journal, the night before she died. The key slid in perfectly. Inside lay a single manila envelope and a USB drive. "Wait!" Talia grabbed my arm. "There's something you should know first." She pulled out her phone, showing me a series of text messages. Between her and Griffin.
About me.
About watching the house. About making sure I found certain things at certain times. My stomach dropped. "You were helping him?" "At first." Talia's voice cracked. "He said it was to protect Mom. But then I saw what he was really doing, using all of us against each other. Just like he always has." Marlowe reached for the envelope, but I pulled it away. "Haven't you done enough?" "Elara, please." She looked older than I'd ever seen her. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. But there's something you need to understand about the night your father died." "I understand plenty." The envelope crinkled in my grip. "You knew about the breaks."
No.
She took Grandma's revolver from her pocket, placing it on a nearby table. "I knew about the insurance policy. Griffin convinced me your father was planning to leave us penniless. Said he had proof. I believed him because I wanted to believe him, because being afraid was easier than being strong." Upstairs, we heard movement, Detective Chen's voice, other officers. "Open it," Talia whispered. The envelope contained documents, bank statements, letters, photographs. Evidence of Griffin's long game, dating back to before he even met Marlowe. He targeted our family, orchestrated my father's death, manipulated everyone around him. But the last document made my blood run cold. A contract signed by both Griffin and Marlowe, dated the day before my father died. It was never about the money, I realized. It was about control. About making sure everyone needed you, depended on you, even if it meant destroying them first. He said he'd take care of everything. Marlowe's voice was barely audible. I didn't know he meant. I never thought. But you suspected. The pieces finally clicked into place. That's why you sent me to Aunt Lorna. Not because you didn't want me. Because you were protecting me from him. Footsteps on the basement stairs. Detective Chen appeared, looking grim. "Griffin's talking," he said. "Trying to cut a deal. Says he has evidence that'll implicate everyone." "Let him talk." I handed over the envelope. "We have evidence too. Real evidence." Marlowe stepped forward, shoulders straight for the first time since I'd seen her. "I'll testify. About everything. The insurance fraud, the property theft, all of it." "Mom, no," Talia protested. "You'll go to prison." "Maybe that's where I need to be." Marlowe touched my cheek, her hand trembling. "Sometimes the only way to protect the ones you love is to face the consequences of failing them." I caught her hand before she could pull away. 15 years of anger and hurt crashed against something else. Understanding. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but the possibility of it. "Grandma's last words to me," I said quietly, "were about truth finding its way home. But maybe it's not about finding truth. Maybe it's about being brave enough to face it when it arrives." Detective Chen cleared his throat. "We'll need statements from all of you." As we climbed the stairs, leaving the basement and its secrets behind, I heard Grandma's voice in my head. The true inheritance lies beneath. She hadn't meant money or property. She'd meant truth, understanding, the courage to face our darkest moments and choose differently. Griffin had tried to bury us all, but he forgot one thing. Sometimes what's buried doesn't die. Sometimes it grows stronger in the darkness, waiting for its moment to break through to the light. 6 months after Griffin's arrest, I stood in Grandma Odessa's garden, watching Talia plant tulip bulbs in the autumn soil. The trial was over, justice served in measured doses. Griffin faced 20 years for fraud and conspiracy, while Marlowe had accepted a plea deal, 18 months, with the possibility of early release. "These will bloom in spring," Talia said, patting the earth smooth. Grandma Odessa's favorites. The word grandma no longer sounded strange coming from her. We'd both learned family wasn't always about blood. My phone buzzed, a text from Lorna. "Visiting hours at 2. Still coming." "You should go," Talia said, reading my hesitation. "Mom's been asking about you." I hadn't visited Marlowe since the sentencing. Part of me still wasn't ready, but another part remembered Grandma's last letter, found in that USB drive from the safe. "My dearest Alara, by the time you read this, you'll know the truth about your father's death. But truth without compassion is just another weapon. Your mother made terrible choices, but she made them from a place of fear. Fear of losing you, fear of facing her own weakness. The real test isn't in finding justice, but in what you do with it once you have it." The foundation office called next. Another property sale had gone through. We'd been liquidating the old family holdings, transforming Griffin's web of lies into something meaningful. The Odessa Morrison Foundation now funded scholarships for children from broken homes, turning pain into possibility. "Ready?" Talia asked, standing and brushing dirt from her knees. The prison visiting room was quiet when they brought Marlowe in. She looked smaller in her institutional uniform, but somehow more present, more real than she'd ever been in her expensive clothes and careful makeup. "The garden's doing well," I said after we sat down. "Talia has quite the green thumb. Like your grandmother." Marlowe's smile was gentle. I never took the time to learn from her. There's so much I never took the time for. "I found something else in the safe," I said, pulling out a faded photograph. "From before Dad died." The picture showed all of us in this garden, me, Marlowe, Dad, and Grandma Odessa. We were laughing, covered in dirt from planting flowers.
Happy. Real.
"I remember that day," Marlowe whispered. "Your father had just finished telling one of his terrible jokes. Even Mother couldn't help laughing." "I'm starting a garden program here," I said. "For the inmates. The warden approved it yesterday." Marlowe's eyes filled with tears. "Alara, you don't have to. I'm not doing it for you." The words came out sharper than intended, but softened as I continued. "I'm doing it because Grandma was right. Some things need to grow in the dark before they can reach the light." As we talked, I felt something shift, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Marlowe spoke about her therapy sessions, about finally facing her own choices. I told her about the foundation, about working with Talia to heal our fractured family tree. When visiting hours ended, Marlowe hesitated before standing. "There's one more thing you should know. The day your father died, I tried to call him, to warn him. I was too late, too afraid, but I tried. I've never told anyone that before." I nodded, letting the information settle. It didn't change anything, but somehow it changed everything. Outside, Talia waited in the car. The autumn sun was setting, painting the prison walls in shades of gold and shadow. I thought about Grandma's garden, about things buried and things growing, about how healing rarely follows the paths we expect. My phone buzzed one last time, an email notification. Another scholarship awarded. Another life changed. In the subject line, "Thank you for helping me grow." Sometimes the truest revenge isn't in destroying what hurt you, but in building something better from the ruins. Grandma Odessa knew that all along. She'd planted those seeds in all of us, waiting patiently for them to bloom. For them to bloom. For them to bloom. For them to bloom. For them